This a good pencil. That's what I said when I was at the local art supply store with my brother. He was getting a gift for my mother, and I needed a new pencil. I know nothing about art supplies or anything, but I thought my drawing pencil is getting small, so I want a new one. Why not deep cobalt green? I also needed paper, so I just got one of these little standard notepads. And I got it all home, and once I got it home, I realized I don't know what I want to draw. I don't know what to draw. But I really wanted to draw, so I went through, I have a reference images folder on my computer, just for inspiration for whatever. And as I was going through it, I stumbled upon a picture that I took after I was playing pickleball. I'm not good at pickleball, and I hate pickleball, but the image itself, I took it because I saw some trees and they looked a little funky, and I thought they could be a cool thing to try to build in Minecraft one day. But with a little bit of transformation, it could be a cool image to draw. Here it is. This is my interpretation. This is all kind of the same tree line and stuff, but I added a cabin. I brought one of these trees to the foreground as well for foreground element, a fence, some bushes, and some waterfalls in the background, and I think it turns it into a pretty cool scene. I did get a little heavy. I liked drawing with this, so I kept drawing, and it all kind of got a little blendy. But there's some elements that I think would be really cool to try to bring into the game, like this kind of sparse leaf pattern like this, I think could be really cool to do in game, or like this cool smoke coming out of the chimney. I think there's some cool stuff that we can try to do in block form in Minecraft. So here we are in Minecraft to make this drawing. I've loaded up a super flat world to be a super flat canvas for us so we can make this drawing in Minecraft. I'm only using 2 mods that are going to affect this. This is Axiom. This is super crazy UI with a lot of complicated stuff. This won't be an Axiom tutorial, but maybe you will learn some things from it. This is also Axiom. It's kind of like a world edit thing where you can move blocks around. We'll use that. And then there's some color stuff here that is also part of Axiom that helps you get gradients and pick colors and all that sort of stuff. That can be very helpful for building. The other thing we're going to use is FreeCam. I've found this to be a very essential tool for building, where you can set up a camera and then go build, boom, boom, and then look at what you've made and see if you like it. Off in the distance there, you see something called the horizon line. That's a very important thing when planning out a picture, and although boring, very important thing for us to plan out now. Right now, the horizon line's in the middle of the screen. If I were to look down, the horizon line is up in the top quarter of it. If I'm going to look up, it's in the bottom quarter. That's a very important thing to try to figure out. In our drawing, the horizon line is just below center. And our drawing is also vertical. So it's not this way. It's not 16 by 9. It's more like 9 by 16. So maybe we'll even create a frame. So now I can come out here and start building like crazy. And then I can go to my camera and see how that looks. But I think this is about our angle. I realize the cabin is the focal point. That's the part that's sitting right in the sweet spot where our eye gets drawn to, and I want it to look good. It's very difficult. You're going to sacrifice a little bit of the visuals if you build it on a 45-degree angle. So in order to keep that cabin looking really nice, we're going to take the picture from our perspective view is going to be on a 45-degree angle. Now, the next thing we have to pay attention to, and this is really the last of the planning things, is scale. There's more planning things, but a player, you got to figure out what scale you're going to build at. Are you going to build a humongous house that has like a 5-tall door that's more, you can pack more detail in very big builds, but I like to build kind of more survival style, and that's kind of going by this rule where the player is about 2 meters tall, and 1 block is 1 meter. Now a doorway, standard doorway, kind of a low one is going to be maybe 8 feet. Real nice one, 9 feet, but then you go maybe a 2 wide door. I think for this we're going to do 2.5 blocks. That's roughly 7 to 8 feet. 7.5 to 8 feet. So I think that's the scale we're kind of build at We're going to base it off of the front door of the cabin. If that's the case, we want to figure out the scale of the trees, because that's a secondary focal point, is the trees. And I kind of did some measurements, and I found the tree is about 11 times the size of the door. So 11 times 2.5. We're going to use our Axiom stacking tool to get that. So we'll click on that with the stack, and we'll roll this up to about 27 blocks. So that's about the height of our trees. This middle one is about the height of our cabin door. Last thing before we start building, we have our camera position, we have our scale, and now we need to figure out our depth. How deep do we need to build certain things to speak what we want the image to be speaking? So a very important rule is the 1, 2, 3 rule, meaning you have a foreground element, something that's close to you, a mid-ground element, which is something right in the middle. That's where you want all your things of interest. And then a background, a very light background element. Sometimes that's just the sky. But in our case, it's going to be a mountain with a waterfall. So I've laid these blocks out kind of to get a feel of what that's going to feel like. Most often, a foreground element is going to be more high contrast. You'll see the shadows more, and you'll see the highlights more. I'm using the vanilla fog right now to help me create this depth. We have the middle ground there, which is nice. It's still, you see the shadows, you still see the highlights, and it's not too fogged out. It's not, you still see the colors pretty vibrantly. And in the background, you can tell that feels very far away because the fog is pushing it off into the distance. If I were to move that, let's move that even closer, right there, it doesn't feel as far away. And this doesn't stand out as much from it. The fact that we have that depth, the different color, the different contrast, helps us mentally figure out what's close to us and what's far away from us. You can see here I did a rough example on the stupid pickleball picture, and just adding that depth and cutting those things out and bringing them forward adds layers of interest that makes the picture look nicer. But all of these rules we set up, our scale, our camera position, our depth, all of that is not just for this picture. I use this all of the time when building in Minecraft. I always pick a perspective point and I lay out these simple, easy rules at the start. And as you're building, they can always be adjusted. This tree can be smaller or taller or whatever. The depths can change, but once you have these fundamental things in place, it makes a lot of the process a lot easier. And now we start building, but we're going to limit ourselves a little bit. We're not going to use a bunch of textures. We're just going to stick to wool. The point of this process is to get major shapes in. We get the shapes in, and then we step back and we look at them and we move them and adjust them until we got it just right. Okay, we've reached an interesting point in the block out process. So this is a path tool. I'm going to lock this path in. The way this path tool works basically is you pick the block you want to use, you pick the block you want to mask over, so grass, and we'll just mask over grass, and then you can lay out shapes that you want for your path. There's a lot of other things you can do with it, but you can also select on a point and override the radius and make it thicker or thinner, something like that. We're not going to, oh, I want that back. Okay, let's take a look at our perspective. This is looking pretty good. It's all rough. This is all just block in stuff. So I block in the path, make sure that follows kind of the way I want it to go. The trees kind of landing where they want. This one, I like that it kind of forces the eye down. It's nice and close and it kind of locks in this area. We might tweak these. These are just duplicates of each other. But I think the blocking is really good. And then we have our forest in the background, which is pushed back just a little further, pushed back this much further. It's actually quite a ways, but we push it back quite a ways because we want to get that feeling of depth. We want that fog to kind of push it back a little bit further so we know these are our closer trees. And then we might mix a little bit in a little closer as well. But I think our general shape is feeling pretty good. I think we have all the shapes about where they want them. I do need to now, I kind of have these trees built here and they're pretty rough looking, but I need to start thinking about texture. Texturing the tree, texturing this back tree line, and start working out blocks. So I've fallen in love with these colors for trees, because guess what? That's what color they are. They're this color. They're not brown. Look in real life. A tree is not brown. It's gray. Tough also blends very nicely with spruce, so I usually combine those two together in order to do branches, because we don't really have fences that work with the tough. But the reason why these two work together so well, this is another great thing you can do in Axiom that'll help me showcase this. You can create a box, a selection, enter, operations, generate color field. And that lays all the blocks in the game out in a color field from lightest to darkest. And then from this perspective, it's like a color wheel. So pink up there, green down there, blue over there, kind of yellows over here. So tough and spruce, they're hanging out in this middle section. We've got the very bright and the very dark. Their hues are off. This is brown back here with the spruce, and this is gray, but still they're kind of in the same area lightness-wise. So once they're under the shadow of trees, they kind of blend well together. Trees are always so difficult for me. They're so finicky getting them just right, but in our drawing, the way I kind of rendered them out was I did very heavy dark pencil on the underside to simulate some shadow, and then lighter on the top. So I'm going to play around with leaves and stuff a little bit to see if I can't get that to come across. We'll see. That looks okay. It doesn't need to be super special, but I do want to mess with it a little bit and see if we can get something that looks nice and lacy and soft. But I need to texture these trees up and kind of texture this background up a little bit. You could potentially spend a lot of time while texturing. You could really focus in on where the sun is coming from and how the light would hit certain shapes, or how there would be varying leaf colors or varying trunk colors for a tree. But we're just replicating this sketch, so we're not going to focus super hard. We aren't going to see these areas super close up, so it's going to be intentionally a little bit rough. I'm seeing the vision. I can feel the vision. It's all happening. The trees are still pretty messy, and they might stay messy. I'm not quite sure, but we're getting that feeling of just a big clump of trees in the backdrop. That was a big project. And here you see how actually gross it is. It's actually very gross, but I just put a bunch of leaf textures in jungle, acacia, oak, and birch to get a little bit of variation in the color. And then I went through and I just cut lines through it like crazy, because leaves kind of grow out like in that way. It gets the point across. You can tell that there's a forest back there. We might clean this up as time goes on, but there's a few things I want to do in the mainframe. Let's paint this. So we have yellow as the block that we're painting over, and dirt path is the path or the block that we're going to paint on. And oh yes, I'm starting to feel something. Now this path is a very important line because it draws your eye. As you're sitting there, it pulls your eye and it just says, "Follow me this way, sir." See that feeling? Feel how it pulls you in? I think that's a very important thing, and I think it works out very well. Now the ground is very plain. That's part of being in a flat world, is there's nothing on the grass. So I want to do a little something in there, and I have a brush set up with a lot of different foliage things and a little bit of a noise pattern for it. We'll test it out and see how it looks. Maybe put an octave or two on it to kind of mess it up a bit. But the way we're going to make this mask is we're going to have an and situation. So the block that we want these foliage things to go on is air. So it'll be replacing air only, but only air that the block below is, we'll drag it in here, grass. So with those two conditions, we can paint. If we didn't have block below, we would be painting some spheres that go up in the air. This is what we want. Now it's only painting down on the ground. So I want to paint this in, and we'll have to do some touch up and clean up and stuff, but I want to just get some foliage. Maybe, that's too much, but let's see how that looks. From a distance, it adds literally nothing, hardly anything, but there's no fluff because it's all on one block level, and these two tall blocks, it doesn't put these. So we got to do another mask for that. So we'll replace air, but only with the tall grass below. And we'll paint on an upper, and that should, help fill those in. It's a little too procedural. You can tell there's like an algorithm behind it, so we'll have to kind of get in by hand. None of this stuff is great just on its own. You want to get in by hand and kind of rough things up, of course, to try to get a more natural look, but I think that's good. I think we'll also try to paint some bushes in here. I've just set it to replace anything that's not grass or dirt. And if we do that, that's not bad. We just put in, I'm using a rock brush now. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. Nothing in the foreground yet, just working on the background, and I think that's subtle and nice enough, and it covers up the lower part of that tree line. Now, there's another thing I want to do. I'm going to take these branches and save them as blueprints. Actually, this is different and easier, I think. So I can select that, copy it, go to the blueprint brush, add clipboard. Very good. Okay. And then add clipboard. Okay, so we have these two. We might add some more variations in there, but we have these two branches, and we're going to set it to only paste it over air. Okay, I guess you can't paste it over air. There might be another way to do it, but you can basically paint in a random smattering of these branches. Now, that's way too much. Base chance, let's lower that. Let's raise the minimum spacing. And that's not bad. We just want to try to squeeze a couple of branches wherever it thinks there should be some. And just like that, we've added another detail. This looks great. Another detail that just makes it come more to life. And it's following, when I was drawing, I was like, oh, I got to erase some areas here to add some trunks to keep this background interesting. I don't know if I would have thought of that if I didn't draw it first. So this is very helpful. I think it's starting to come together. Another important step is to step back and just take a break. Stop working and just look. Look at what you're doing. And I've done that. And I've just gone through, and like I said, I kind of did some hand placement of some things just to rough things up. None of this will be seen, just for our picture's sake, none of this will be seen very up close. If this was going to be your survival world, you maybe want to get a little more detailed in here. But I've done some things with I've taken the tops of these trees and I've put them on the top here just to add a little bit of realism to this, and I might do more of that as we go. I've also gone through and put some of these carpets down because from our perspective, it adds a little bit of a dark outline, which I think is pretty cool and adds more interest. And then I placed some bushes around the bases of trees. It's kind of natural. That happens naturally, but it also kind of hides the base of trees because the base of trees can be kind of ugly in Minecraft. Now, I've done some tweaking to the frame. I've made it black, as you can see. And the black helps us really sink into the image, which is really nice. It's just helping our visuals. Something I do, and I'm not going to do this here, but I'll do it in editing for you, is I'll shrink the frame and make it smaller and step back and look at it from a distance. When you do that, you can almost soak in more of the picture and see some areas that might need a little bit of love or some things that are off. But for where we're at right now, I think we're in a good place. Now, I want to do something. I want to turn off fog, okay? Here we are with fog, and we have that depth and all that stuff that we've been talking about. But with fog turned off, all of a sudden, we lose our depth. The shadows, the shadows are a lot more extreme, but all of that green turns into a big blob. And that red thing back there, although it's a different color, which we're going to talk about in a second, that also blends in. So we lose all that depth and there's less of the image communicating to us. Now, even still, with the fog on, it's still kind of blending, but we can work on that later if we need to. There's some other tips and tricks. But now it's time to focus on the cabin. This is our focal point. So there's some things we have to consider for our focal point. Here is an example. What do you look at first? Do you look at this or do you look at this? You might not know, but I can tell you for sure you looked at this. You know why? Because of the contrast. Luminance. This is a very dark color. This is a very bright color. So this checkerboard instantly makes our eyes go over there first. We prioritize this. This is kind of what our backdrop is. This green on green, little shadow, little lightness. So we can use luminance. We can use varying colors and stuff to help people focus on the cabin when they look at it. But behind door number 2 or wall number 2, there is hue. So hue is kind of the color. I don't know all the terms, right? But hue, this is a purple hue. This is a blue hue. This is a greenish hue. This is an orange hue. So the hue, you can go from blue to the opposite end of the spectrum to orange. Those are opposing hues, which can help draw the eye as well. But that hue draws your attention a little bit. Not as much as the luminance, but still, it's an attention grabber. So we can use some complementary colors if needed. Behind door number 3 is saturation. So here is saturation difference. This is gray and this is red. Now, the saturation, in the center of this big mess here, this is the least saturated area. There's very little color in this. So you can take something with very little color right around, where is it? Right here. But then way up here is bright red. That's a big difference in saturation. So that can also be something to kind of pull your eye and attention. Luminance difference, hue difference, and saturation difference. Another great benefit of Axiom is this wonderful multiple hotbars that we can use. So I've set up a little hotbar with some potential colors. Now, these are not as extreme as our examples, but we can still use them. So what I'm thinking is it's like a wood siding cabin. This is going to be pretty finicky. And I've done something like this on Hermitcraft with a cabin where you put a base in and then you put this over it to kind of give a little bit of a shadow. We'll see how this works out. But I have also in the drawing made it to where one side is bright and one side is a little darker. So we might even on one side use some darker colors, and that'll also add to that luminance difference. But then also for the roof I intended it to be kind of a cedar shake shingle, which is wood. And that's a tough thing to do. I always kind of default to deep slate, but I want to at least try something like that and just see how it turns out. Roughly, this is what I'm thinking. And that has enough contrast. We have some very dark colors in here, and we have some light colors, but we're also using different hues as well. We're going in more into the browns. So we'll see. We'll see how this comes together. I'm going to really play a lot with these colors, and this is an important area. Out here, we can be kind of messy because we don't want to look out here. This is where we don't want to focus. We want to focus here. So I'm going to put quite a bit of attention to this and see if we can't find a sweet spot. And we'll get to that right after a quick commercial break. I thought I told you, never use the internet without turning on your ExpressVPN. Oh great, what's this? Oh, sure enough, targeted. We don't need this. We don't need this at all. But, well, you search online for some boating stuff, and then all of a sudden you're targeted, and you end up with this big, huge thing in your house. This whole process is all legal. Third parties, they're allowed to track your browsing data and information. And they're also allowed to sell that to other parties so that they can target you and make you buy stuff you don't need. If you use ExpressVPN, your browsing data gets rerouted through a secure encrypted server. It's going to help prevent you from getting bombarded with advertisements of things that you might actually kind of want. It's a smart choice. Don't allow yourself to get targeted. So go to expressvpn.com/bdubs to try it for yourself and get 3 months free. All right, putting some finishing touches on the cabin. But this is giving me an opportunity to show you another great Axiom thing. So, this is a gradient tool, gradient helper, so you can place one block here and then the other end of the gradient down here, and it shows you all the blocks that could be in between it. I haven't even really seen how this is going to look. Tuck a little mycelium in there. That's nice, that's nice. I'm not quite sure how this is going to look, but I like putting a little bit of dark streaks underneath and around chimneys in order to kind of separate them from the build a little bit. But let's go to our spot. It's a nice blend. I like it. I like it. I realized I went through a lot of iterations and I probably could spend a lot more time on this. But where I landed, I think, has a very nice visual. And the thing that I realized is the thing that really makes this stand out. We have this line, the path line pointing to the cabin here. This is also a very high contrast area. For the cabin, we're actually, remember our lesson? We didn't do much luminance difference for the cabin. We're mainly kind of in the hue changes and saturation changes. Leaves are kind of around here in the color wheel, and we didn't go very far to the dark or the light. We just brought it in closer to the center. So it's still kind of in this same grouping of luminance, but we did shift the hue and the saturation slightly. I think if I put a slab there, yeah, that helps. See how that helps separate the chimney from the roof line? That looks nice. You know, if this is in survival, you can just pop down a campfire. How? You can just pop down a campfire, like so. And you're going to get these plumes that really stand out from the background. So that can help. That can help draw the eye downward, even though they're kind of flowing upward. So you could just put a campfire in there. It depends on what you're going for, but I think this is a really nice look and a cool shape that points us down to the cabin. And even though it's not super contrasty off the background, you don't miss it. And I really feel like we've got this middle ground area, the focal point area, all worked out, which is nice. That's kind of the most difficult part. But now I want to work on the foreground. Foreground first, which shouldn't be too bad, and then background last. It'll be very interesting to see how this looks, because in the drawing I had crisscross fences. Here, that's a lot harder to duplicate. So we'll see. I think this is highlighting the fact that when I was drawing, it's very hard to draw 3D stuff when you're doing perspectives and stuff. I think I was drawing my fences a little too small, but I'm seeing a pretty nice look here. So I had fences with some bushes in front. Let's get some other colors. So it would maybe be roughly here. And I bet if I do it too tall, I bet it's going to block our view. I was way off. It's way off to the side. Whoops. Oh boy. Okay. This is going to change things a little bit. Maybe. Let's break the fence a little bit, like the leaves are coming through. All right. That's cool. That's not bad, but we definitely can't make it too tall, because as soon as we do, we lose the cabin. So I think actually the way I drew it, the camera, you're supposed to draw from like normal person height. I think I drew it from like the height of about a 7 foot tall, 8 foot tall person. I think I have my camera angle more like this. You know what? The more I look at it like this, the more I like it. I think I'm making an executive decision. Moving the camera late, very late. What if we put bushes? Yeah, the bushes help. The bushes really help a lot, and they help fluff it up as well. I think that's our look. This is out a little too far. We can clean these up with some... Yeah, that's about right. I think that's a good look right there. All right, that was simple. A baby could do it. Just some leaves and stuff in here, and then another little bush over there. Couple little tricks. Ooh, I think that looks nice. Now, there's one other thing I want to try for the foreground before we move on. Leaves don't entirely block out the light. Real blocks, these blocks do. We'll get instant shadow beneath us with these, but leaves kind of just do a subtle, I forget exactly how much, doesn't matter what leaf. I forget exactly how much they lower it, but they do lower the light level below. You can see that's more in shadow than that is. And we can move this up to any height. Now this is a trick not as great for survival, because you're just going to see something floating in the sky. Unless you build it way, 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 way up. It doesn't matter how high it is, the shadow's still going to be the same. And that actually does darken our foreground a little bit more. This bush in the front is a little bit darker. That is the goal. That's what I'm trying to accomplish here, is to darken that foreground just a little bit. That's also part of the 1, 2, 3 rule. I think darker foreground is nice. I think that's a good thing. You want that, because you don't want your eyes looking right at the very bottom of a picture. Might be going overboard. This will be something that I kind of want to look at over time and see if it just settles in and feels nice. Poke a hole there, maybe? It's almost like a natural vignette, and it's helping control your eye as well, where your eye is looking and controlling some of the lightness. Ooh, I think I like what's happening right now. There's an added benefit that we get these leaves falling down in front of our camera view as well, which is nice. But I think that's it. Foreground, very simple. Not a whole lot there. And we already kind of just did a little bit of dressing around that tree. I think that's kind of it for the foreground. Now, time for the background. And this one, I'm not looking forward to, but maybe I'm looking forward to it. I'm not quite sure. Ooh, brush slipped. I hope I'm doing a good job of explaining this. I'm having so much fun doing this little project, and I hope it's coming across and you guys are enjoying it and maybe learning something from it as well. All right, I'm kind of laying out a little bit of a jagged shape back here that I think the wall could follow, and then I'll just bring that up. Extrude brush here, set it to like extrude, how much? Let's go 100? Plop that in. Oh, heavens to Betsy. It's not nearly tall enough, but... Oh, yeah. Okay, that might actually be our halfway height. I think that's a good halfway height. Ooh, it's all starting to come together. Okay, I've just taken that basic shape that we had down there, and I flipped and rotated and pasted and doubled, and we have this humongous, huge backdrop up here. But scale-wise, if you look at everything, I mean, look at it from a distance, it looks so cool. But that feels like trees and then humongous, massive Swiss Alps mountain. It feels like the right scale and height. I love how this is super, super light. It's one of the brightest spots on the picture. And that's good. That's kind of what you want. But we'll break this up. I basically need to texture this and get our little waterfalls in. And I think we're done. All right, forgive these mountains. They are not the greatest in the world, but you could spend days and days on making real nice, look good mountains. And basically what I did, they were all red, so I set a mask of red, and then you can just put random blocks in here. And then you can pick a noise pattern of what you want, simplex, or this, and it kind of puts it out in that pattern. You can overlay patterns and whatnot. So that's kind of how I got to where, oh, lag city. That's kind of how I got to where I am now with this look. So the next thing I want to do, and probably one of our last things, is, woo, I'm far away. I want to put in our waterfall, and I think I see roughly where we need to be. Ooh, hive leaf flyby. Okay, so let's just say, let's change this line, this path we're going to do to a Catmull Rom spline. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the words, okay? And we're going to come out like this, making sure the shape of this line is a sphere. I'm going to set the radius to like 2. Now that I'm up close, I think I want to raise that just a little bit more. Bring this guy down a little further. And let's commit. All right, that feels like a pretty good representation of the drawing. We have the waterfall coming down the middle and then the 2 branching out off to the side. Now, could leave them just like wool, just like that. White glass a little better. It's not bad. White glass and regular glass. It's not a bad look. It's fairly realistic looking aside from the fact that it's blending in a lot with the background. So even more white. This is pretty good. I like this. We went from the glass, the dark glass. We were just doing white glass, diorite, and white wool. White wool is super, super bright. I think there's one thing we can do to help this. Whew, this is a complex mask. Okay, this is a good one. But we're doing, our cliffs are all made out of these 4 blocks right here. So we want to replace any of those. Or this, or this, or this, or this. That's why or. But also, and, we want it to be near 1 block away from, you can set how far away it is, glass, all these ones that we use for the waterfall. So hopefully, my hope is that if we brush near these, we will get a nice, hold on. All right, I like how this is working out. It's just putting a little bit of a dark edge, which would make the stone more wet, which makes sense, but it's a little thin. I'd like to make it a little bit bigger if possible. It's not bad. It's not a bad jumping off point. I can go from here, and this is when I can kind of visualize, okay, what's happening here? It's almost like a little helper that just says, hey, what do you think about doing this, B-dubs? So we can just clean this up a little bit by hand and make it look how we want. There's so much tweaking that could be done to this. I guess this is a good point for me to remind that we are currently working on just this concept to see, can we draw something and then build it in Minecraft? Normally, if I was going to turn this into something for my survival world, like if you want to build something like this for yourself to play in, this would be like step 1. This is still blocking phase. Once you get into the survival area, then you really have to start. Now we're walking down here and we can feel all of the manipulation and stuff like that and all the messiness. So there's several more hours of like cleanup and stuff to really get this feeling good from a survival standpoint. But I really like this method. Also, drawing it is helping me with something. So I'm looking at the 2 cliffs, the 2 mountains, and I feel like they're blending a little bit. Well, of course, when I was drawing, I drew a line up here that helped kind of create that separation. So I think maybe darkening this a little bit, floating, darkening this a little bit may help create that separation. I want to try it. Sometimes, when doing all of this modded building stuff, some blocks don't update properly. And I really hope that this fence facing in like this doesn't ruin this tree. Look at that nice branch up there, right there. Will it be ruined when it's gone? No, it's fine. But I think adding that dark edge on there really helped. If we did like stone slabs and stairs and stuff like that, I think it would have maybe helped create that shadow. But just going in by hand and putting a little ridge on there, a mix of like deep slate and tough to darken it, separate it from the back cliffside. Do I dare to say this? I feel like we have a 1-to-1 recreation of our drawing, aside from this one's more colorful. The only thing that's bothering me a little bit, and it doesn't bother you so much when you're moving. When you're moving, you see these front blocks moving much quicker than the back blocks. So that helps create that separation as well. But when you're just standing here, it is still a little on the muddy side. This is a trick. It might not work, but I want to try it. Okay, I've put in light gray glass line, and then can I extrude it up 100? I'm nervous to try it. Extrude up 100. Oh, I got the sweet spot. Okay, put it in, and then get away. It's pretty extreme. That's pretty extreme, but it's a way to, if you're just taking pictures or something like that, or just doing it for artistic purposes, you can create separation by using a glass wall. The glass kind of lightens the background, does that thing that we've been using the fog for. If I'm brave enough and I turn off fog, what does that do? Huh? That's so dark. Wow. Okay, but that does something too. That's another look. You know, it's another style. Ooh, interesting. This is with gray. I painted it all gray. I think I love it. Aside from the grids, you know, it's really cool. It looks great on the forest part, I feel like. It makes the forest push back just a little bit, and it even fogs the forest out. I like that. That's cool. But we're not going to do that. Let's undo it. Let's get rid of that whole thing, and let's just enjoy what we've made. How about a steppy stool? Is that the right height? That's about the right height. There it is. We set out from the very beginning to see, could we build something we drew in real life? Now, I think there's some difficulties. When you're drawing, you have the ability to do some things that are a lot harder to do in block form. But what I learned along the way is that drawing actually helped me plan some things. When we're in Minecraft and we're playing in Minecraft, we're restricted to blocks, and our library, our visual library, can be a little bit small. But if you draw it, maybe there's something you can draw that's easier than you can build, and then you're forced. Like, these leaf shapes are kind of interesting. They're kind of difficult, but because of the picture of that tree, it kind of forced me to do that. There's some other areas where it's like, oh yeah, even the way I was building in here, I realized for this chimney, the top of the chimney had a little bit of a lip on it, and I wasn't getting that when this was a full block. That looked a little too bulky, so I came in here like this, and now I learned a new chimney trick. To just put walls on the corner, it still looks like a square, but it makes that feel more like a lip. This is very messy, but I've never been able to do a nice cedar shake roof, and from a distance, it really sells it. You really feel like that's cedar. That's a cedar shake roof. So there's little things that I learned along the way that I didn't know before. So to answer the question, can you build something that you drew in real life? I'd say the answer is yes. With a little bit of planning early. You know, we did some of the fundamental things to help plan out how this is supposed to go. Then once we got those in, we could just roll. And this took me maybe 6 hours, maybe 8 hours to build in total. Now, if this was going to be a finished product, it would probably be another 8 to 16 hours to really clean it up and stuff. But for our purposes today, I think it was well worth it. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed the process. I think we're ready for a screenshot. F2, there it is. Thank you so much for watching. I love you to death, and we'll see you in the next episode.